Hey guys, so this video is all about gene expression. Okay, so first of all, what is a gene? A gene, simply put, is just a segment of DNA. Remember that DNA is double-stranded. There are two strands of DNA. We have strand 1 and strand 2. Now, let's say that this is one DNA strand. This is one of many DNA strands inside your cell. Your cells actually, your DNA inside your cells is not one long continuous strand. It's actually broken up into chunks that are called chromosomes. Okay, so you have 46 chromosomes in each cell. So let's say that this is actually one whole chromosome. And there's actually, 46 of these chromosomes inside of each and every nucleus inside your body, with the exception of a few that I won't go into right now. But for the most part, every cell in your body has 46 chromosomes. And those 46 chromosomes are separate pieces that when you put them all together, inside the nucleus, they kind of just float around and swirl around each other, and collectively it all makes your DNA, but it's not one big piece, like I said. Now, each chromosome, each of these 46 chromosomes, is actually broken up into even smaller segments that we call genes, okay? So let's say that between here, actually let me change the color here so it's easier to see. Let's say that between here and here is gene number 1. And between here and here is gene number 2. And between here and here is 3. And here to here is 4. Okay, so on this chromosome we have 4 genes. Now in reality there's going to be way more than that, but we're just using a simple example here, okay? So these are genes, the things that are in red. That's a gene, that's a gene, that's a gene, and that's a gene. Just segments of DNA. So here's what gene expression is, okay? I'm going to have to draw a line through there. Just ignore that. Don't worry about that. Gene expression is the way that genes are turned on or off inside of a cell, okay? So first of all, every cell, all cells have all DNA. In other words, every single cell in your body has the entire copy of the giant book of DNA, even the parts that have nothing to do with that cell. So your hair cells, they do have hair cell DNA, but they also have DNA from every single other type of cell inside of it. So they know, they have all the instructions on how to become any of the kinds of cells that make up your body. However, they only pay attention to just the instructions that tell it how to be a hair cell. We talked about that in a previous video, okay? And the way that that happens is that of all the DNA, of all the 46 chromosomes and all the genes that are on each of those chromosomes, only the hair cell genes are turned on. Yes, genes can be turned on or left off, okay? So let's say that gene number 2 is the hair cell gene. When gene number 2 is turned on, then it becomes a hair cell. Now, if you were to turn this off and turn gene 3 on, then it would no longer be a hair cell, it would be something else, okay? So the type of cell that something is dependent on which genes in the DNA are turned on and which are left off. You turn on the hair cell genes, it becomes a hair cell. You turn on the heart cell genes, it becomes a heart cell. And if you have both hair and heart on at the same time, well, then that obviously won't work. Cells can't be two things at once. That cell would probably die in infancy, or it would never take off to begin with, okay? So even though every cell has all the DNA, it only expresses just the portions of the DNA that it needs to express to be the type of cell that it needs to be. And it expresses those genes by turning them on. Okay, now, here's what can cause a gene to turn on or off. The thing that can cause genes to turn on or off are environmental. I know this is messy, but I only have so much room. Environmental conditions. So when your body is in certain conditions, or animals or plants or even bacteria in certain conditions, they will activate or deactivate genes accordingly to be able to survive better in that changing environment. Here's an example. So this is a Himalayan rabbit. Now the Himalayan rabbit, they did an experiment on this because these rabbits change color throughout the year. Okay, in the summer these rabbits are white, and in the winter these rabbits develop black spots or go entirely black. So what they did is they did an experiment where they took this rabbit and they shaved a piece on its back, a part of its back. They secured an ice pack to that shaved part, and when the hair grew back, even though it wasn't the winter, when the hair grew back, it grew back black in that spot where they had put the ice pack. Okay? So what happened here was that because of a changing environmental condition, we simulated cold weather with the ice pack. That part of the skin, the genes and the cells of that part of the skin were turned on to activate the black hair genes instead of the white hair genes. Okay? So scientists are actually figuring out how to do this stuff manually, but not by shaving rabbits and putting on ice packs, but by this technology that is called CRISPR. And you can actually look it up. CRISPR is a technology that allows scientists to physically go into the DNA of a certain organism and manually pick which genes they want to turn on and which genes they want to turn off. Almost like flipping light switches, like I want to have these on and I want to turn these off. It's not quite that simple, but that technology does exist. Another example for to give you an idea of the type of things that can happen inside of a human is insulin production. Okay, so in people, in your bloodstream, you have glucose. This is in your bloodstream. You have glucose in your bloodstream, and when you have glucose in your bloodstream, you actually, when the amount of glucose in your bloodstream gets to a certain concentration, your body responds by turning on genes in your pancreas. Pancreas produces insulin. So when these genes in your pancreas get turned on, it creates more insulin. And that insulin goes into the bloodstream to take glucose out of the bloodstream and put them into your body's cells. And that's how diabetes happens, is whenever your body is unable to make the insulin, so the glucose can't go into the cells where it's needed. It actually just stays in the bloodstream. It's not any good in the bloodstream. It's good to go from point A to B, but when the glucose gets to where it needs to go, it needs to be able to hop out of the bloodstream and into the cell. And what makes it able to do that is insulin. So if you don't have insulin, then the glucose can't go into the cell, it stays in the bloodstream, and it doesn't really do any good, okay? So that's one example of the many examples that we could give, but we won't for the sake of time, about one of the things that, one of the ways that your body responds to changing conditions. And in a short-term basis, I mean, we're talking about within, an hour or so, or maybe even less of the time that you eat something. So in summary, remember that all genes have all DNA, but only some genes are expressed and environment can cause genes to be turned on or turned off accordingly. Thanks. Bye.